The Odysseus died in 17 seconds. Commander Nora Velez watched the Xylo's energy lances tear through their hull from the bridge viewport, each strike precise and surgical. The Dominion didn't want wreckage. They wanted a corpse they could pick clean. Her hands moved across the console, damage reports flooding her display like blood from an arterial wound. "Drive core offline," came the voice of engineer Marcus Webb through the crackling intercom. "They hit our fuel cells specifically. Targeting algorithms knew exactly where to strike." Velez didn't flinch. Life support. 47 crew. Maybe 3 hours of oxygen left. Maybe less if the hull breach in Section 7 isn't sealed. The Xylo's boarding party entered through the rupture 3 minutes later. They moved like gray statues, their 4 arms carrying cutting tools and scanners, ignoring the frozen bodies of the 2 crew members who had been standing near the breach when containment failed. Velez watched them through internal cameras as they stripped the Odysseus of its navigation arrays, its communications relays, its secondary processors. "They're taking everything," whispered Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from the weapons station. Her hands trembled over dead controls. "Why aren't they just killing us?" Velez had asked herself the same question. The answer came when she saw one of the Xylo's aliens pause at a crew member's body, not to finish the wounded human, but to scan the emergency beacon embedded in their uniform. The alien's triangular head tilted, then moved on. "They want us alive," Velez said, the realization settling like poison in her stomach. "Alive means we send distress signals. Distress signals mean reinforcements come looking. Reinforcements mean more ships for them to strip." "Bastards are using us as bait," Tanaka spat. The Xylos departed 8 minutes later, their shuttles swallowing the stolen components. They left the Odysseus spinning in the black, its crew bleeding air into the void, its hull perforated in 100 places. The final damage report reached Velez's console: propulsion dead, communications dead, weapons dead, navigation dead. Even the emergency backup systems had been systematically removed. Webb's voice returned, quieter now. "Commander, I've been through every system. There's nothing left to salvage. Nothing human, anyway." Velez closed her eyes. 93% of the Odysseus was alien architecture now, gaping holes where human engineering used to be. The Xylos had been thorough, efficient. They understood exactly what to take to leave a ship breathing but brain-dead. "Their weapons," she said suddenly. "Excuse me." The boarding party, they were carrying cutting tools, plasma torches. Did they take them all? A long pause. Then, "No, there are 3 power cells still attached to the hull in Section 4. They must have detached them in a hurry when our hull collapsed inward." Velez opened her eyes. "Get a team. I want every piece of Xylo's technology on this ship brought to engineering. Every bolt, every wire, every scrap." "Commander, with respect, what are we going to do with alien tech? We don't understand their power systems, their frequencies, their—" "We're going to learn," Velez cut him off. "Because in 2 hours and 47 minutes, the alternative is suffocating in the dark while the Xylos wait for more humans to kill." She turned from the viewport facing the bridge crew. Their faces were pale, smudged with carbon scoring and dried blood from the impact, but their eyes were still alive. "Humanity didn't reach the stars because we had the best technology," Velez said. "We reached the stars because we're too stubborn to stay down. Those aliens think they left us for dead. Let's prove them wrong." The lights flickered once, twice, then died entirely. Emergency backup, what little remained, faded to red. In the darkness, Velez heard her crew begin to move. Marcus Webb held the Xylo's power core in his hands and felt something he hadn't expected: familiarity. The object was the size of his fist, warm to the touch despite the vacuum exposure, and pulsed with a soft amber light. He'd expected alien technology to feel incomprehensible, some kind of exotic matter that followed physics humans hadn't discovered yet. But this This felt like holding a battery. Frequency signature matches our systems at 43%, he said, not looking up from the diagnostic tool he jury-rigged from a broken helmet display and 3 meters of copper wire. That's not a coincidence. Lieutenant Tanaka stood beside him in the engineering bay, her arms crossed over her chest. 3 other crew members worked in the background, carefully removing the other 2 power cells from the hull section. The air was getting thin. Webb could feel the pressure change in his ears every time he exhaled. "What are you saying?" Tanaka asked. "I'm saying the Xylos didn't invent new physics. They just optimized different branches of it." Webb turned the core over, studying the energy conduits etched into its surface. "See these patterns? They're not alien, they're just efficient. No waste, no redundancy. Every piece does exactly one job and it does it perfectly." "Is that bad for us?" "It's terrible for us." Webb finally looked up. "Because when something goes wrong with one of these systems, there's no backup, no failsafe, no emergency override. The Xylos build technology that assumes everything will always work exactly as designed." "And humans?" Webb almost smiled. "Humans build technology that assumes everything will catch fire at the worst possible moment. We build redundancy on top of redundancy. We build systems that can run at 50% capacity and still function. We build for failure because Earth never stopped trying to kill us." Tanaka's eyes widened. "So their power cores are compatible with our systems because the physics is the same, but they never considered someone might use their power sources for something they weren't designed for." Webb stood up, gripping the core tighter. "They left us their weapons, Lieutenant, and their weapons run on energy we can use." The engineering bay fell silent. Webb walked to the ruined drive core, a tangled mess of melted conduits and shattered housing that had once powered humanity's fastest ship. He held the Xylos core against the main coupling port. It was the wrong shape, the wrong connection type, the wrong everything. But the light pulsed in rhythm with the dying ship's remaining systems. "What's our oxygen left?" Webb asked. 2 hours, 11 minutes, someone answered. "Then we don't have time to do this right." Webb pulled a plasma cutter from his belt. "We're going to do it wrong, and we're going to pray that wrong is good enough." He cut the first connection before anyone could argue. The core responded immediately, amber light flaring bright, then settling into a steady glow. The ship's emergency lights flickered, died, then came back at twice their previous brightness. A console on the far wall beeped, the first non-alarm sound Webb had heard in hours. "Life support is stabilizing," Tanaka reported, her voice cracking. "Pressure loss slowing. We just bought ourselves another hour." Webb didn't celebrate. He was already cutting the second coupling, his hands moving with a precision that belied his exhaustion. 3 cores, 3 connections. If he was right, they wouldn't just survive. They'd move. Behind him, the Xylos power core hummed with alien energy, now flowing through human wires, human circuits, human desperation. The 2 species' technologies intertwined like predators circling each other, neither one dominant, both changed by the contact. Webb's father had been a deep-sea repair technician on an oil rig. He used to tell stories about keeping ancient machines running in saltwater corrosion and hurricane winds. "Son," he'd say, "any idiot can build something that works when everything's perfect. The question is, can you keep it working when everything's on fire?" The second core locked into place. The drive core housing, still shattered, began to glow. "We're not dead yet," Webb whispered. The ship shuddered once, not from damage but from power. New power. Power that didn't belong here but had been forced into service anyway. A proximity alarm blared. Tanaka's face went white. "The Xylos fleet," she said. "They're coming back. They must have detected the energy spike." Webb looked at the third core, still waiting on the floor. 2 hours of oxygen left. 1 fleet of alien warships incoming. and one human engineer with nothing left to lose. Then we'd better give them something to remember us by. The Xylo's flagship Dominance returned to find its prey still breathing. Commander Velez watched the alien vessel slide into visual range through the Odysseus's partially restored sensors, a massive crescent-shaped warship surrounded by 6 smaller escorts. They moved with the casual confidence of predators who had never encountered resistance. Their weapons were dark, their shields inactive. They expected a corpse. Instead, they found a ship running on stolen bones. "Webb, talk to me," Velez said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "How much do we have?" 3 cores all online, drive at 12%, weapons at 0, communications at 0, navigation at 4%. A pause. "We have thrust, not much but enough to drift." "Can we run?" "No, but we can fall with style." The Xylos hailed them on an open channel, the first time the aliens had bothered to communicate directly. A voice emerged from the bridge speakers, filtered through a translator that added a metallic rasp to every word. "Human vessel, you have activated systems beyond your capacity to maintain. Power down and prepare for boarding. Your crew will not be harmed if you comply." Tanaka looked at Velez. "They're lying." "Of course they're lying." Velez keyed the comm. "Xylo's command, this is Commander Nora Velez of the Earth vessel Odysseus. We decline your invitation." A long silence. Then, "You have no weapons, no shields, no means of escape. What do you hope to accomplish?" Velez glanced at the engineering feed on her console. Webb was already rewiring the 3rd core into the ship's maneuvering thrusters, a configuration that would have made any human engineer weep with horror and admiration. The couplings were held together with melted plastic and prayer. "We're not trying to accomplish anything," Velez said. "We're trying to survive, and you'd be surprised what humans can survive when we're angry." She cut the channel before they could respond. Webb's voice came through the intercom. "Commander, I need to warn you, these cores aren't stable. The Xylos designed them for steady, predictable output. Running them through human systems is causing fluctuations. We might get 10 minutes of thrust before they overload." 10 minutes is all I need." "What are you planning?" Velez didn't answer. She was watching the Xylos fleet rearrange itself, 2 escorts moving to flank the Odysseus, the flagship hanging back with its weapons now active. They expected a last desperate charge. They expected panic. They didn't expect what she did next. "Webb, cut power to life support. Route everything to thrusters." "Commander, that will kill us in." "In 20 minutes, yes, but right now I don't need to breathe. I need to move." The ship lurched as every remaining watt of power slammed into the maneuvering system. The Xylos cores screamed. Webb could hear them whining through the hull, a frequency that made his teeth ache. But they held. The Odysseus didn't charge the enemy. It didn't try to flee. Instead, it rotated, slowly, painfully, like a wounded animal turning to face its hunter, and pointed its bow directly at the nearest Xylos escort. "What is it doing?" Tanaka whispered. "Something the Xylos never considered," Velez replied. "Something their technology can't do." The Odysseus fired its thrusters at maximum output, not to move forward but to spin. The ship rotated on its axis like a discus thrower winding up, centrifugal force pulling at the hull, at the crew, at every patch job Webb had welded together in the past hour. The Xylos escort tried to evade. Its engines fired perfectly, smoothly, exactly as designed. But the Xylos had never learned to push past their limits. The Odysseus slammed into the escort's flank at an angle that should have been impossible, a glancing blow that sheared off the alien ship's thrusters and sent it tumbling into its companion. 2 escorts disabled, their crews screaming over open channels. On the bridge of the Dominance, the Xylos fleet commander watched in disbelief. The human ship was breaking apart. He could see hull fragments spinning away, atmosphere venting from a dozen ruptures. But it was still moving, still fighting, still refusing to die. "All ships," the commander ordered, "destroy that vessel immediately." But the Odysseus was already gone, drifting into the debris field of its own collision, its power signature masked by the wreckage of the escorts. To Xylo's sensors, it looked like another piece of debris, another corpse. Veles counted to 60 in the darkness. Then she whispered into her comm, "Webb, restart life support." Nothing happened. "Webb." A cough, then, "Give me a second, I'm pretty sure I just died." The lights flickered back on dim but steady. The air recyclers hummed to life, pushing barely breathable atmosphere through the bridge. Tanaka was bleeding from a cut above her eye. 2 other crew members were unconscious. But they were alive. And somewhere in the debris field, 6 Xylo's power cores floated, abandoned by the escorts when they'd broken apart. Human salvage, human opportunity. Webb's voice came through again, weaker this time. "Commander, I've been thinking. If we can make one ship work on their power, imagine what we could do with a fleet." Veles smiled, a predator's smile, cold and hungry. "That's exactly what I'm imagining." Outside, the Xylo's fleet regrouped and jumped to FTL, leaving their dead behind. They thought the threat was neutralized. They had no idea what they'd just created. The Odysseus drifted for 11 days. Webb spent every waking hour, and most of the ones where he should have been sleeping, studying the salvaged Xylo's components. 6 new power cores, 3 weapon emitters, 2 shield generators, and a navigation array that had somehow survived the collision intact. The alien technology spread across the engineering bay like an autopsy in progress, each piece dissected and cataloged and understood. "They don't believe in backups," Webb explained to the assembled crew on day 4. They'd gathered in the mess hall, the only compartment with working lights, their faces hollow from rationed food and recycled air. "Every Xylo's system is designed to operate at exactly 73% of its theoretical maximum. That gives them perfect efficiency. No waste heat, no energy loss, no risk." "So what's the problem?" asked a young ensign from the back. Webb held up a Xylo's power conduit. "This component is rated for 1,000 hours of continuous operation. After that, it fails catastrophically. There's no warning, no gradual degradation, no maintenance cycle. When it breaks, it breaks." "And human components?" "We build them to fail slowly, to give us time to fix them, to run at double their rated capacity if we're desperate enough." Webb set the conduit down. "The Xylos built a perfect machine. We built a machine that refuses to stop working, even when it should." The crew exchanged glances. Understanding spread through the room like heat through metal. Tanaka was the first to voice it. "So their technology is better, until it isn't." "Until something goes wrong," Webb confirmed. "And something always goes wrong, especially when humans are involved." On day 7, they tested the theory. Webb connected 3 Xylo's power cores to a single shield emitter, a configuration that should have overloaded the system in seconds. The alien schematics warned against it in language that translated roughly to catastrophic cascade failure. But Webb had grown up watching his grandfather overclock computers in a basement workshop. He knew exactly what happened when you pushed hardware past its limits. The shield emitter activated at 300% output. For 17 seconds, the Odysseus generated a defensive barrier strong enough to deflect capital ship weapons. Then the emitter melted, not failed, but sacrificed itself, leaving behind a slagged housing that had absorbed energy no Xylo's engineer had ever imagined possible. 17 seconds, Webb said, staring at the wreckage. "That's all we need." On day 11, Veles made her decision. "We're not going home," she announced to the bridge crew. "There's no point. The Xylos will be waiting for any ship that comes looking for us. They'll set traps. They'll pick off reinforcements one by one. So what do we do? Tanaka asked. We go hunting. The plan was insane. Webb knew it was insane. Every engineer who had ever lived would have called it insane. But the Xylos had made a fatal mistake. They'd assumed humanity would react like every other species they'd conquered. They'd assumed fear, submission, desperation. They hadn't assumed rage. The Odysseus jumped to FTL on day 14, not toward human space but toward the edge of Xylos territory. The navigation was imprecise, the drive stability questionable, and the life support kept failing every 6 hours. But the ship moved. That was enough. Their first target was a Xylos supply depot, a massive orbital facility surrounded by automated defenses and a single patrol frigate. Any human warship would have needed a battle group to crack that nut. The Odysseus had something better. Technology the Xylos didn't understand could be turned against them. Webb had spent the past 3 days modifying the salvaged weapons emitters, rewiring their targeting systems to lock onto Xylos' IFF signals, the unique identifiers every Dominion ship broadcast to avoid friendly fire. The Xylos had never considered an enemy might capture their weapons and use them. Why would they? No species they'd encountered had ever been reckless enough to try. No species they've encountered was human, Webb muttered as he finished the last connection. The battle lasted 90 seconds. The Odysseus emerged from FTL directly behind the patrol frigate, a position that should have been impossible given the depot's sensor coverage. But Xylos' sensors had blind spots. Every system did. Humans had just learned to exploit theirs faster. The frigate never saw them coming. Webb's modified weapons locked onto the IFF signal and fired, Xylos' energy meeting Xylos' shields in a feedback loop that collapsed both in a cascade of light. The frigate's reactors went critical 3 seconds later, and the Odysseus was already moving toward the depot before the debris finished expanding. Shields at 80%, Tanaka reported. Weapons recharging. Keep firing, Velez ordered. Hit their communications array first, then their docking clamps. I want every ship in that depot trapped. The supply depot tried to surrender. Velez ignored the hails. She wasn't here for prisoners or negotiations. She was here for parts. When the firing stopped, the Odysseus had captured 3 intact Xylos freighters, 12 fighter craft, and enough power cores to build a fleet. Webb stood in the cargo bay, surrounded by alien technology that was about to become something new, something dangerous, something the Xylos had never imagined. We're going to need a bigger ship, he said. Velez nodded. We're going to need a lot of them. She opened a channel, not to Earth, but to a hidden human outpost on the edge of Xylos space, a place the Dominion didn't know existed, a place where humans had been building something in secret for years. This is Commander Nora Velez of the Odysseus, she said. Tell Admiral Costas we have a delivery for him, and tell him to start warming up the shipyards. The response came back immediately. What are you sending us? Velez looked at the captured freighters, the fighter craft, the power cores stacked like firewood in her cargo bay. Salvage, she said, the kind that wins wars. Admiral Myra Costas had spent 20 years preparing for a war she never thought would come. The hidden outpost, designated Haven 7, existed in the gap between Xylos territory and human space, a region the Dominion considered empty and worthless. That was its value. 3,000 humans had lived there in secret for 2 decades, building shipyards beneath asteroid shells, factories inside dead moons, and a fleet that existed only on paper. Until the Odysseus arrived with its cargo of alien salvage. Costas watched the data stream from Velez's ship on her command display, her weathered face unreadable. 63 years old, with hands calloused from a lifetime of welding and a mind sharpened by decades of hiding, she understood immediately what the younger commander had discovered. They crippled you, Costas said when Velez appeared on her screen. And you turned their own technology into a weapon. They turned it into a key, Velez corrected. The weapon is what we build around it. The shipyards of Haven 7 had been designed to build human warships, the Defiant-class destroyers that formed the backbone of Earth's hidden reserve fleet. But those ships required human power cores, human weapons, human components that were difficult to manufacture in hiding. The Xylo's salvage changed everything. On day 1, Costas ordered her engineers to reverse engineer the captured power cores. The results matched Webb's findings. Xylo's technology was elegant, efficient, and completely unsuited for combat. But when combined with human systems, with human redundancy, human overrides, human desperation, it became something new. Like putting a lion's heart in a wolf's body, one engineer muttered. No, Webb replied. Like putting a wolf's instincts in a lion's body, the Xylos built the muscle, we're building the teeth. The first hybrid warship launched on day 47. Costas named it the Revenant, a ship that had risen from the dead to take revenge on its killers. Its hull was human engineering, its power core was Xylo's salvage, and its weapons were something neither species had ever seen. A fusion of two technologies that should have been incompatible, forced together by human stubbornness. The Revenant could run its shields at 200% for 90 seconds. Its weapons could fire 3 times faster than any Xylo's equivalent. Its drive could push the ship to speeds the Dominion considered impossible, because the Dominion had never learned to ride an engine until it screamed for mercy. The Xylos will notice, Costas warned her staff during a strategy meeting. They'll send a fleet to investigate. We have maybe 6 months before they find Haven 7. 6 months is plenty, Webb said. He wasn't exaggerating. The captured Xylos freighters became mobile factories, churning out components for new ships. The fighter craft became test beds for weapon modifications. The power cores, dozens of them now, salvaged from depots and patrol vessels across the sector, became the beating hearts of a fleet that grew by the week. On day 90, the Xylos noticed. A reconnaissance drone passed through the Haven 7 system, not close enough to detect the hidden shipyards, but close enough to notice the energy signatures of 20 hybrid warships running combat drills. The Dominion command reacted with confusion, then concern, then alarm. Unknown vessels detected in Sector Theta 9. Configuration unknown. Power signatures inconsistent with known species. Recommend investigation. The investigation never happened, because on day 93, Costas launched her fleet. 20 ships emerged from the asteroid field like ghosts, their hulls painted black, their emissions masked by Xylos-derived stealth technology, their crews hungry for revenge. They didn't head for Dominion space. They headed for the one place the Xylos would never expect an attack, their own supply lines. The first target was a convoy carrying fuel to the front lines. 12 Xylos freighters escorted by 4 corvettes, a force that could have obliterated any human fleet from 5 years ago. The Revenant and its sisters hit them from 3 directions simultaneously, their weapons cycling through frequencies the Xylos couldn't counter, their shields absorbing hits that should have torn them apart. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Every Xylos ship was destroyed or captured. Human losses, 0. Costas studied the after-action report with a satisfaction she hadn't felt in decades. Send a message to Earth, she told her communications officer. Tell them the fleet is ready. Tell them we're coming home. Not home, Velez said from the doorway of the Admiral's quarters. We're going to the Xylos' homeworld. We're going to show them what happens when you cripple a species that doesn't know how to stay down. Costas looked at the younger woman, saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had kept the Odysseus alive against impossible odds. You really think we can win? Velez smiled. Admiral, we already won. The Xylos just don't know it yet. Outside the viewport, The hybrid fleet assembled for the jump to FTL. 20 ships that shouldn't exist, built from salvage and spite, crewed by humans who had been left for dead. The war was about to change. The Xylo's homeworld defense fleet numbered 200 ships. Admiral Costas studied the tactical display on the Revenant's bridge, her expression calm despite the odds. The Dominion had finally realized the threat, not just to their supply lines, but to their very existence. Every available warship had been recalled to protect their home system. Sensor platforms dotted the space lanes. Minefields choked the jump points. "They're scared," Veles observed. "No, they're cautious. There's a difference." Costas zoomed the display, highlighting the enemy formation. The Xylos have never faced an enemy that could hurt them. They don't know how to react, so they're falling back on what they know: overwhelming force. 200 to 1 isn't overwhelming, it's suicide. Costas finally smiled. "Only if we fight fair." The plan had been months in the making, developed in secret meetings, tested in simulated battles, refined through dozens of smaller engagements. It relied on every weakness Webb had discovered in Xylo's technology. No redundancy, no emergency systems, no ability to operate at partial capacity. In short, the Dominion's ships worked perfectly until they didn't. And when they stopped working, they stayed stopped. The human fleet split into 4 groups of 5 ships each group targeting a different approach vector. The Xylo's defenders adjusted their formation, perfectly, efficiently, exactly as their tactical algorithms dictated. They moved their ships to counter each threat with mathematical precision. That was their mistake. "Group 1, engage now," Costas ordered. 5 human ships emerged from FTL directly in front of the Xylo's formation, a position that should have been suicide. The Dominion weapons locked on, fired and struck shields that flared bright but held. Human shields, running at 200% capacity, powered by Xylo's cores, pushed far beyond their design limits. Shields at 60% and dropping, Tanaka reported from the Revenant's tactical station. "We have maybe 40 seconds before." 30 seconds is all we need," Costas cut her off. "Group 2, go." The second group emerged behind the Xylo's formation, their weapons already cycling through frequency shifts that confused Dominion targeting systems. The Xylos had to choose: face the threat ahead or the threat behind. Their algorithms couldn't decide. Their ships hesitated. For 3 seconds, the Xylo's fleet did nothing. It was enough. "All groups full assault," Costas ordered. The human fleet struck like a hammer from every direction, not trying to destroy the Xylo's ships, but to disable them. Webb had designed the weapons specifically for this: energy pulses that overloaded Xylo's power conduits, causing cascading failures that spread through their systems like wildfire. A single hit could cripple a cruiser. 2 hits could kill it. The Xylos fought back. They had no choice, but their weapons were designed for efficiency, not endurance. They fired in perfect bursts, then paused to cool. They maneuvered in predictable patterns, then reset to formation. They did everything right. And that was why they lost. "Enemy flagship is hailing us," the communications officer reported. Costas nodded. "Put them through." The Xylo's commander appeared on the main display, a triangular face with 4 dark eyes, its expression unreadable. "Human Admiral, you have demonstrated your capability. We offer terms of surrender." "I'm not interested in surrender," Costas replied. "Then what do you want?" Costas stood up from her command chair, moving closer to the display. Outside the viewport, the battle continued, human ships swarming through the Xylo's formation, picking apart the enemy fleet piece by piece. But Costas wasn't watching the battle. She was watching the Xylo's commander's eyes. "I want you to understand something," she said. "You crippled our ship, left us to die, stole our technology and assumed we would just fade away. That's what every other species did when you conquered them. They gave up. They accepted their place in your dominion. She paused, letting the words sink in. But humans don't give up. We don't accept anything. When you crippled us, we didn't see defeat. We saw opportunity. We took your technology, your perfect, efficient, fragile technology, and we made it better, stronger, more dangerous than anything your engineers ever imagined. The Xylo's commander's eye ridges tightened. You are bluffing. Your ships are powered by our cores. They cannot function without. They're powered by your cores, yes. Costas smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. But they're controlled by our systems, our software, our desperation. Your technology is just the muscle, Commander, and muscle without a brain is just meat. Outside, the last Xylo's cruiser lost power and went dark. Your fleet is disabled, Costas continued. Your homeworld is defenseless, and your dominion just learned a very important lesson about humanity. She leaned closer to the display. We don't break, we adapt. And if you ever threaten us again, we won't just cripple your ships, we'll wear your wreckage as armor. She cut the channel. The bridge fell silent. Around the Revenant, the human fleet regrouped, 20 ships, battered but unbroken, floating in the space where a 200-ship armada had been moments before. Velez let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What now? Costas turned to face her crew, the men and women who had turned salvage into salvation, who had refused to die when death was the smart option. Now, she said, we offer them peace on our terms. The treaty was signed in the wreckage of the Xylo's flagship. Admiral Costas chose the location deliberately, not on the homeworld, not on a neutral station, but aboard the disabled Dominance, surrounded by the evidence of human ingenuity. Xylo's engineers had to walk past their own destroyed systems to reach the negotiation table. Every flickering light, every sparking conduit, every shattered display reminded them of what humanity had done. The terms were simple. The Xylo's dominion would withdraw from human space permanently. All captured human technology would be returned. All human prisoners would be released, and the Dominion would provide resources to repair the damage caused by their attack on the Odysseus and other human vessels. In return, humanity would share one thing, the secret of redundancy. Webb stood in the back of the negotiation chamber as the Xylo's delegation reviewed the terms. He watched their expressions, or whatever passed for expressions on those triangular faces, shift from resistance to calculation to something that looked almost like respect. Your design philosophy is inefficient, the Xylo's ambassador finally said. Building multiple systems to perform the same function wastes resources. It also means you don't die when one system fails, Webb replied, which, based on our observations, happens to your ships quite a lot. The ambassador's eye ridges tightened. You are mocking us. No, Webb stepped forward, his voice softening. I'm offering you a choice. You can keep building perfect machines that break catastrophically the first time something goes wrong, or you can learn to build ugly, messy, redundant machines that keep working even when they should fall apart. That is your gift to us. That's the only gift humanity has, Webb said. We didn't reach the stars because we were the smartest species or the strongest species. We reached the stars because we refused to stop trying. Every ship we ever built was held together by desperation and prayer. Every colony we ever established nearly killed us. But we kept going, because that's what humans do. The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it extended one of its 4 arms, a gesture of respect in Xylo's culture. Webb took the hand. Outside the Dominance, the human fleet waited, 20 ships that had started as salvage and become salvation. Their crews floated in zero gravity, watching the stars turn, knowing that everything had changed. Velez found Costas on the observation deck of the Revenant, staring at the Xylo's homeworld through the viewport. You did it, Velez said. You actually did it. No, Costas shook her head. We did it, every engineer who worked through the night, every pilot who flew into impossible odds, every crew member who refused to give up when the Xylos left us for dead. She turned to face Velez. "You started this, Commander, on the Odysseus, with nothing but alien salvage and human stubbornness." Velez thought about those first hours after the attack, the darkness, the failing life support, the moment she decided to fight instead of surrender. She thought about Webb holding that first power core, about Tanaka bleeding on the bridge, about the 17 seconds of shield output that had saved them all. "We didn't win because we were stronger," Velez said quietly. "We won because we were too angry to lose." Costas nodded. "That's the human advantage, not technology, not tactics, the simple, absolute refusal to accept defeat." She gestured at the viewport, at the disabled Xylos fleet floating in the darkness. "The Dominion spent centuries conquering species that knew when to give up. They never faced anyone like us. Will they learn?" "I don't know," Costas smiled, a tired, honest smile that didn't hide the weight of what she'd done. "But if they don't, we'll be ready. We'll always be ready. Because that's what we are now, Nora. We're the species that turns defeat into victory, that turns salvage into fleets, that turns enemies into whatever they become next." Velez looked out at the stars, at the human ships, at the Xylos wreckage, at the infinite darkness between them. She thought about the Odysseus, still floating somewhere in that darkness, its hull scarred but its spirit unbroken. "Webb wants to rebuild it," she said. "The Odysseus. He thinks he can make it better than before, faster, stronger." "Let him," Costas said. "That's what we do. We rebuild, we improve, we refuse to stay broken." The two women stood in silence, watching the stars turn. Behind them, the human fleet began to form up for the jump home, 20 ships that had started as salvage and become a legend. But they weren't the end of the story. They were just the beginning. Because somewhere in the darkness, other human ships were being built. Other engineers were studying Xylos technology, finding new ways to twist it, break it, remake it. Other commanders were planning strategies that no alien mind could predict. The war was over. But humanity's transformation had just begun. In the years that followed, the Xylos Dominion would tell stories about the human fleet, the ships that rose from the dead, the crews that refused to surrender, the species that turned enemy technology into weapons of war. Other species would hear those stories and wonder, what kind of people build victory from defeat? And humans would answer, the kind who never learned to stay down. The kind who look at a crippled ship and see not a coffin, but an opportunity. The kind who turn salvage into salvation. Every single time.